All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and we're going to talk about the welterweight division. This time, Jaron "Boots" Ennis and his father, Bozy Ennis, talk about the likelihood of an Errol Spence Jr. fight happening next and whether or not Errol Spence Jr. is going to take that fight. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. We're going to talk about the welterweight division in this video. But before I get into the main subject matter of the video, please make sure that you hit the like button before you leave the video if you like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel, share all of those good things that really help grow the channel. All right, man, we got the welterweight division is one of the hottest divisions in boxing, and there is a young rising superstar named Jaron Ennis that very well may be in a position for a title shot very, very soon against Errol Spence Jr. There was an interview that was given by his father, Bozy Ennis, and he was asked about what he thought the likelihood of that fight was. And to be honest, man, he didn't really sound like he was overly hopeful for Errol Spence Jr. fighting him. And in fact, he said that, that Errol Spence Jr., from his understanding, really wants to fight the guys with the belts, and that he would probably, that he would do a lot of different things before fighting Jaron Ennis. So he says that he believes that that Errol Spence would either vacate the belt, not to fight him, and still have a unification fight against either Ugas or Crawford, or he could even see him moving up to 154 pounds and doing that before he fought Jaron Ennis. And so those guys, just didn't seem very, very excited, or like they didn't really sound like they had their hopes up for that fight taking place. I'm not quite sure why they would feel that way, seeing as the IBF is probably the most fair of all of the sanctioning bodies. And Errol Spence Jr., I don't think is giving away any belts or ducking any fights where he is mandated to have that fight. Of course, what Errol Spence Jr. has said that he wanted to do, and is most clear that he wants to do, is to fight the major champions, the guys with the championship belts, the Yordenis Ugas or the Terrence Crawford fight. I mean, obviously, that's what he would probably want to do the most. But I do see there being a scenario where Jaron Ennis might be able to force himself into the mix of that fight by basically saying to the IBF, petitioning the IBF to become the mandatory, right? If he does that, and the IBF says yes, I believe that he's going to get that fight. I don't think that Errol Spence Jr. is going to be somebody that, if he's mandated to take that fight, even next, that he would skip out on that fight, because Errol's just doesn't seem to be that type of guy to me. Now, as far as what his team would do and things like that, I really can't speak to that. If I was their management team, I wouldn't want to see Errol Spence Jr. in there with Jaron Ennis, at this stage in Jaron Ennis's career, for several reasons. One, even though I do believe that Errol Spence Jr.'s camp and them would be confident in winning the fight, that fight with Jaron Ennis is definitely, if Jaron Ennis is everything that a lot of people believe that he is something down the road that could really be a mega fight. And I know that we're, especially around this channel and the conversations with the people that I talk to on a regular basis, people don't always want to let fights marinate. They're like, look, man, if we can get the fight now, let's get the fight now. There's so many fights in boxing that marinate forever and ever and ever. And then they wind up being in a situation where we don't actually get the fight. But this fight with Jaron Ennis, I think, is one that you can pretty much count on him winning his way out of this lower echelon of fighters. I mean, and by that I mean anybody who is not named Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence Jr. I think Jaron Ennis is going to get past them. Even if Errol Spence Jr. moves up to 154 pounds and he becomes an undisputed champion at 154 pounds, Jaron Ennis is not going to be very far behind him, and is definitely somebody that, with the name recognition that he's getting this early in his career, because of how spectacular he is, that fight is going to be available. So I wouldn't say if I was predicting what Al Heyman wants to do or what Derek James would want to do, I wouldn't necessarily say that they would want to do that. But Errol Spence Jr. himself, man, this guy does not, I don't believe this guy has an off button. Anybody that would come off of a car accident where a car flips 17 times and, you know, he takes the amount of time off that he needs to heal and comes back and fights a guy like Danny Garcia, right? Coming off of that type of car accident and knowing that he's not 100% is not somebody that lacks confidence. In fact, being able to do that may very well, you know, increase the confidence of Errol Spence Jr. and his willingness and his belief in himself, because he overcame so much to get back in the ring and get back in shape. So, you know, while I'm not sure whether or not the IBF is going to actually order that fight, most likely, or I won't say most likely, is a very, very large chance what they'll do is have a title eliminator. You know, because Jaron Ennis is not the #1 guy in that division yet. He's the #3, and it's not, you know, guaranteed that they would not have somebody jump over the top of him, like maybe even Cody Crawley, the guy that beat Kurtadillo Abukarev, and, you know, and have him skip up to 1 and then just have him be the mandatory. Or they could order a mandatory between Virgil Ortiz and Jaron Ennis. A whole lot of different things can happen with those guys as far as who would be named the IBF mandatory. But what I'm pretty comfortable saying is that IBF mandatory is probably is a large possibility of that coming next. Bozy Ennis, for his part, said, you know, that he's like, how long was the guy that was there before? How long was he the mandatory for Errol Spence Jr. They didn't make the fight? He said, you know, it's been like a year, but, you know, it's been a year since he was mandated, but it's been almost 3 years since that mandatory was called at all. And I just can't foresee these guys continuing to hold off on that, you know, year after year after year. Of course, everybody wants to see the Terrence Crawford and the Errol Spence Jr. fight, but it doesn't really seem like there's any, you know, move being made towards that. Once we see who it is that Terrence Crawford signs with, or who Terrence Crawford starts negotiating with, you know, in the next couple months, I think we'll have a better idea about it. But it just doesn't really seem like that fight is going to be next. I think more, you know, there's a good chance that Terrence Crawford might go and fight just some whoever it is, and then fight Keith Thurman, because Keith Thurman is one of the guys that Terrence Crawford said that he wanted to fight, and Keith Thurman said he was willing to make that fight. And I think economically that fight probably works for Terrence Crawford. And Terrence Crawford might not fight again until the middle of the year. Keith Thurman is going to be fighting, I do believe, at the end of January. And if Terrence Crawford doesn't fight until July, that is right in tune with having that Keith Thurman fight be next for Terrence Crawford. And I think that there's a higher likelihood of Keith Thurman being next than there is Errol Spence. So if Errol Spence Jr. isn't going to fight Terrence Crawford, and he's not going to fight Yordenis Ugas next, because Yordenis Ugas has 2 mandatories on him, and that fight won't happen till probably 2023, that IBF really seems like that's in line. So even if you know, they don't necessarily think that he's going to do it, they should probably petition for it and see if they can get that fight, and then see what Errol Spence would do. But if Errol Spence Jr. can't get this, I wouldn't doubt that he would try to move up and get a bigger fight at 154 pounds. That really is a lot of risk for Jaron Ennis. For Jaron Ennis to fight Jaron Ennis, and a lower reward for fighting Jaron Ennis now. But I think that would be more the people around him than it would be Terrence Crawford himself. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace. Make sure y'all hit that like. Peace.